Tonight, I'm here to discuss the idea of land acknowledgement and why I feel that as a group, we can do more than that. Before I start, I would just like everybody grab your cell phones. I'll let you do this while I introduce myself, but get them ready. My name is Twa-le Abrahamson-Swan. I was born here in Spokane. I'm a mother of two daughters, Ryam and Nakaya. My mother was Deb Abrahamson and my father was George Andrew, both Spokane tribal members, both of our ancestors now. My grandparents were Spokane, Colville, Coeur d'Alene, and Navajo. My grandmother, Harriet Condon, lives really close to here. She's 101 years old now and has lived in Spokane a majority of her life. For over 10,000 years, my ancestors have been born and continue to this day to travel to Spokane for healthcare and to be born here in Spokane. The city was built on the ancestral lands and waters of the Spokane tribe. And then for everybody that is not here at this gathering in person, what I want you to do now is unlock your phone and text your zip code to 855-917-5263. Or if you don't have time to do that now or want to share that with somebody else, the website is www.native-land.ca. This app will, based on your location, share which Indigenous ancestral lands you live and work on. These are links. There also include links to learn more about the specific nation, language, treaties, and more. So wherever you're at, it always is a good tool to keep in mind and as you do research about where you end up in your work. But as we continue our work and take a stand against racism here in Spokane, we must be mindful of the history of the spaces that we occupy. This can be at the city level and also the buildings that we meet in. We recognize and admit that the lands we occupy and all of the resources were acquired by genocide, enslaved labor, brutality, deception, and broken promises. We honor those who, despite the injustices perpetrated against their lands, cultures, languages, and bodies, continue their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Today, I especially want to take a minute of silence to remember and honor the souls of the 215 children's graves that were uncovered at a residential school in Canada. Kamloops, where the latest discovery of a mass grave is only a little over 300 miles from here in Spokane. We have many survivors of the boarding and residential schools living here. Those schools were used by both the United States and the Canadian governments and religious institutions. Here in the United States, our relatives have yet to see any movement towards reconciliation or healing. To this day, the Indigenous peoples of these lands and waters are being barred from crucial discussions and negotiations that will dictate the use and quality of water that we still to this day depend on. These are both local and international discussions, but they're happening today and we continue to be excluded. When looking at those maps, and if you do participate in any types of land acknowledgements in the future, you must also be aware that Indigenous peoples have always been nomadic, and we often traveled and shared areas for our subsistence and cultural needs. Spokane is the perfect example of that. There are many tribes in this region that traveled here seasonally and gathered on the banks at the falls of the Spokane River to fish, to trade, to celebrate. Those same tribes were also here by our side. Their warriors were also murdered here in Spokane by the US military and by early settlers, along with over 800 horses and rivers full of salmon. There are over 300 nations represented today in Spokane, and you won't find information about them when you search on the app or in the city's land acknowledgement, which only recognizes one tribe. But in reality, throughout US history, the United States government has regularly sought to relocate Native Americans both through force and through policy. The Indian Relocation Act of 1956 was a United States law intended to encourage American Indians to leave reservations and their traditional lands and to assimilate into the general population in urban areas. Spokane was one of those cities who saw tribal members from many nations moved here in times of termination, along with the other policies that were intended to eradicate the remaining survivors of genocide. My ancestors were the first evicted from these lands the city of Spokane was built on. And today in 2021, the racial inequity gap in many areas continues to grow at the highest rate for the American Indian and Alaska Native homeless populations in Spokane. Our population has stayed the same in the data. We make up less than 2% of Spokane's population. In 2019, we made up 8% of the homeless population. In 2020, as other groups of numbers of homeless went down, ours continued to grow, and we still make up less than 2% of the population, but 12% of the homeless population. I look forward to walking beside you as we seek justice and healing in Spokane. I thank you for listening, and instead of a land acknowledgement, I'm here to thank you for your work and let you know you're welcome and appreciated for your role in righting the wrongs that this city was built on. Thank you.